Before we dive into this episode, I have a quick question for you. What do you think might be the most underrated crop in the average garden? I think it's garlic. This was the first year I planted garlic and I'm in love. Go to territorialseed.com/simple to see what I'm talking about and grab a discount code. I love the fact that you can plant garlic in the fall when it's a slower time, not in the craziness of spring. And I love that there's two options to choose from: hardneck, which gives you a spicier flavor, and two, harvest, because you can harvest the scapes before the garlic. But the soft neck garlic gives you a longer shelf life. So you know what? I recommend you try some of both. Territorialseed.com/simple. It's also a fantastic companion plant. I planted mine by my broccoli and Brussels sprouts, and it has helped repel the cabbage moths all summer long. Don't wait though, because the garlic will sell out quickly. It does every year. If you wait, it might be gone next week. So go to territorialseed.com/simple and take advantage of the discount as well. Hi, guys. Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We are here Mondays and Fridays working at simplifying things in our lives one day at a time, one simple step at a time. I'm your host, Michelle Visser, and today we're talking about a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart because often when I think about my journey towards eating better, it always includes drinking better. And the first thing that I think of is Coke and my battle with Diet Coke, specifically Coke Zero. And I'm going to share with you today where I am today and tell you my recipe for making homemade Coke. I also want to tell you, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, that Spotify now gives you an option to leave a review if you're over on Spotify. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please take a second, leave a review there. That's the number one thing you can do if you want to just reach out to me about the podcast and support me in some way. It would mean the world. Often us content creators are just excited about all the things that we can share, and we kind of get caught up in a little bubble of content creation. Sometimes we even wonder if anybody even hears what we're saying, like at all, which is fine because sometimes we're just like, well, I'm going to put it out there and put it out there and put it out there, and eventually it's going to help somebody. But to hear back from you guys that one of these episodes really impacted you or helped you in some way, it means the world to me. So if you want to take a second and go leave a review, I will read it probably the very day you leave it, and I will be very excited. So thanks, guys, for all your support in so many ways. Also, of course, any sponsor of this podcast would never get to that position of being a sponsor unless it was a company that I wholeheartedly really am impressed with, really love their product, that I use their products often. So anything that you hear coming up on any episode from a sponsor, if you want to go check them out, that also helps me. It supports me and my family. But it gets me excited to hear back from you guys about that too, to tell me how some of the things that I recommended have been game changers for you and or your family. So again, thanks, guys. So most of the soft drinks on the market today, are you ready for this? They're essentially liquid cocaine. I'm not making that up. I'm not just being facetious or silly. It's really true. And actually, there are scientific studies that explain this. This is not just an off the cuff thing I'm saying. In fact, I will leave links in the show notes to both of the scientific studies that I referenced today. But essentially, well, you know what? I'll tell you two things. One, if you want to go back to season 3, long time ago, episode 11, that episode is all about soda and why we shouldn't be drinking it. And one of the studies that I'm going to read a little bit from now, we talk at much greater in detail about. So that's season 3, episode 11. This study, I'm just going to read a little bit to you. This is the abstract of the study. And I got to tell you, I'm kind of impressed that whoever the scientists that were working on this, one of them was actually pretty decent at writing. Usually you go to read an abstract, and of course, the abstract's supposed to be the part that's the summary that makes sense to the average person. Even then, usually these scientific studies are really hard to decipher. But this one, It actually is pretty well written. So I'm just going to read this paragraph to you. Available evidence in humans shows that sugar and sweetness can induce reward and craving that are comparable in magnitude to those induced by addictive drugs. Although this evidence is limited by the inherent difficulty of comparing different types of rewards and psychological experiences in humans, it is nevertheless supported by recent experimental research on sugar and sweet reward in lab rats. Overall, this research has revealed that sugar and sweet reward can not only substitute two addictive drugs like cocaine, but can even be more rewarding and more attractive. Did you hear that? They're basically saying sugary foods are more addictive than cocaine. Last sentence here. At the neurobiological level, the neural substances of sugar and sweet reward appear to be more robust than those of cocaine. It goes, of course, beyond that. It's not just the sugar, but that alone tells us, holy camole, we need to be drinking and eating complex natural sugars. We did a whole episode on what are the best sugars to be using and what are the ones you should never use. I think you will like that. That was the CEO of Azure Standard that came on. I don't have that episode number in front of me, but I will link it in the show notes. Writing myself a note so I don't forget to. And that gives you some more ideas of what you can be using in your foods and your drinks that actually aren't going to cause this problem that this scientific study is talking about. But it's not just that, of course. There's other additive things that go into these processed drinks and foods that we're buying that literally make them addictive on top of the sugar addiction problem. So it's like a triple whammy in some ways. It's insane. I've had a couple episodes not too far in the past that two different experts came on. One was someone who's an expert in marketing, and he talked about the impacts of marketing on our food choices. And he went into other great points too about processed food. And then I had on Haley, who, forgetting her last name right this second, Shalik, I think, who has authored books for kids about real food and the value of real food. And her husband is, oh, what is his title? I'm not sure of his title. He's a medical doctor. And she worked for Pfizer. And what a great insight she brought. So both of those episodes, you might be really interested if this whole topic is interesting to you. So I'll link those as well. Better write those down too. Okay. Just writing my note. And Haley. Okay. So that's 3 links I promised you. Okay. Moving on. There's another study that I'm not going to read to you from because this one, they are probably brilliant scientists, but nobody could write. It was just awful. I really had to wade through it. But this is what I took away from it. And I will link the study in the show notes if you want to go wade through it yourself. You're, of course, welcome to. But they explained that using a preclinical model that they had, they generated basically equal choices to the people who they were studying. And they had an equal choice between heroin or something. They weren't giving heroin, of course, but that's what I'm talking about with that preclinical thing, something like heroin or something like a food reward. I don't know more than that. I didn't read in depth what they actually did, but those scientists examined the impact of basically a person's oxytocin level on their decision making. And it turned out that the oxytocin, the level of it that the person had, didn't keep a person from choosing heroin or sugar when the reward was right there in front of them. But this is the thing that really struck me, and this is why I'm sharing this study with you. The oxytocin that the person's body was creating, that they were causing to be created by the different things they were doing in the lab, that oxytocin actually reduced the likelihood that the person was going to seek heroin or sugary foods. if they were not easily available. So that gives us great hope, because what that tells us, well, it tells us a couple things. I mean, I'm sure it tells us even more, but this is what it told Michelle's brain. Number one, we need oxytocin. I'm going to get into that in a second. And number two, we need to not be putting this temptation right in front of us in our pantries, in our homes, on our dinner tables. Like, if at all possible, if we can get rid of the temptation. So for me, if I could just get rid of Coke Zero and not have it readily available, that combined with creating oxytocin and doing some things we're going to talk about would help me break the habit. Like that gives me great hope. I will say though, before I go further, and you guys know, if you've listened for any amount of time to this podcast, you have heard me say this again and again, and usually I'm saying it about Diet Coke or Coke Zero. Um, I never told myself I couldn't have any. I never totally eliminated it in my mind. Like, I never said, that's it, from this day forward, I will never again drink that. Because knowing me and my mindset, that would have made things much worse. That would have made me crave it even more. So knowing that, you know what, maybe in 6 months when I'm having a pizza, sitting out at a picnic and enjoying the evening, maybe I'll grab an ice cold Coke Zero and have it with my pizza. And knowing that made it easier to not have it today, if that makes sense. And eventually I got to the point that I honestly have no idea when I had it last. I really don't. I'd imagine it's been a year or two, but I don't know. And I'm also sitting right here telling you, if I really, really desire it and it would go deliciously with what I'm eating, maybe, maybe I'd have one. I'm not going to like totally, I don't know, reprimand myself and never forgive myself if I do. So anyway, I just had to put that in there. So oxytocin, what can we do to increase our oxytocin? I'm just going to rattle these off because this is not really the main point. My main point is to share with you guys how to make your own Coke and to encourage you about that if you do have a real kind of inclination toward drinking the sugary sodas. That's what this episode's really about. But oxytocin is going to help you break your addiction. So here are some of the things that you can be doing that's going to help. You can be eating magnesium rich foods. I'm going to give you just a few examples. Google magnesium rich foods and find ones that you love. But for me, spinach. I really enjoy spinach, either in smoothies or in mixed in with my salad. I will often have a spinach salad, but if I'm not having all spinach, I will try to mix it in with my other greens because it's magnesium rich. Also, avocado. I love using fresh avocado to make my tuna sandwich. I don't use any mayonnaise or other oils. I just mush in the avocado with my chicken meat. Really good stuff. And the last one I'm going to mention is my personal favorite that is high in magnesium is dark chocolate. Anybody watching on YouTube? I'm going to tell you a secret that nobody in my family knows. You ready for this? Over my shoulder. Can you see it? I can't tell on my screen because my screen is not a full screen. Yes, you can. Over my shoulder. In that tin right there. It's an antique tin that used to sit on a shelf high in my grandmother's kitchen. I use it to store my stash of dark chocolate because sometimes a girl just absolutely needs to have some, and sometimes a girl doesn't want to share. So, shh, don't tell anybody. Okay, magnesium rich, dark chocolate, spinach, avocado. Look up some other ones that you'll love. Also, just literally just touching someone's hand, grabbing onto their hand, shaking their hand, or when you're talking to them, just put your hand on their shoulder. Just those little tiny things. It sounds silly, but I try whenever possible when I'm talking to somebody. If it's not weird, I don't do it to a stranger, of course, but if it's a friend, I'll put my hand on their arm and say, "Hey, you know what?" And I don't leave it there forever, but just the small physical touch. It's just been shown again and again and again that it lets somebody know you care about them, and it instantly increases their oxytocin. So, I guess some of these actually are ways you can help other people have oxytocin, because I'm not sure if you can actually tell somebody, when you're talking to me, can you put your hand on my shoulder? But you could, you know what? You can get hugs, right? You can solicit hugs from those you love anytime. Do it. It will help you, believe it or not, break your soda addiction. Sounds crazy, right? Also, music. Just having on upbeat music that you love increases your oxytocin. Psychological stimulation, like a fragrance that you love. If you like essential oils, they can really improve your mood. And emotion, anything that really, those things. I mean, I can tell you the first thing I think of this time of year that makes me happy, that I know it will improve my overall outlook and my emotions. It's to go into the garden, to just get my hands in the dirt for a minute, even if it's just walking through the garden and picking a weed or two. It's going to improve my mood. So that is a place that I go when I know I need that boost of oxytocin. Also, social interaction. This is something I have to go out of my way sometimes to make sure I put on my calendar, and I do because my calendar tends to be full of things I love to do that are work related, you know? So make the time to be with friends, with family, with your kids, and have time with just them. Put your phone away, put your work behind you for half an hour or whatever time you have, and interact with other people. It's important. It really is. Um, and making eye contact matters, which is another reason to put the phone away. But even in public, just you don't even have to be overly friendly. My dad never met a stranger, so I kind of get that from him sometimes. And I am one to embarrass my kids by just chatting with a stranger sometimes because I enjoy it. But you don't have to be like that. You can just make eye contact walking down the grocery aisle. Make eye contact and smile. They might think you're a little weird, but I guarantee you it's going to make both of you feel better. And next one on my list, exercising. If you listened to the episode a couple Mondays ago, I talked about exercising on two different levels. So you might like to go listen to episode 127. It's called something like 11 Small Changes That Will Uplevel Your Life. Two of those 11 things revolve around exercise, and that's going to increase your oxytocin. Laughing makes so much difference. Now, you can't make yourself laugh, but you can put yourself in a situation that you know you're going to be happy. That's probably going to lead to laughter. Being in my garden by myself, that's going to increase my oxytocin, but not through laughter, right? But watching a funny movie. I love rom-coms. They're my favorite. Are they every girl's favorite? I don't know. I love rom-coms and I love that they make me laugh. But even more than that, I love a good game night with family. I actually did an episode. I looked back to see when it was, and I couldn't believe it was my fifth episode ever. It was literally episode number 5. Then I went to seasons, and then I switched over to numbers again. So it's a little confusing when you're looking back through episodes. But if you go all the way back to number 5, that one is all about games. And I explain what games are a family's absolute favorite. And I break down why and break it down by who might like different kind of games. And now that I'm thinking about it, that would be a good thing to do again someday because we've added new games to our repertoire since then that are definitely our favorites. Anyway, playing a game with friends will often, depending on, the game and how intense you might be, will often lead to laughter. And that's one reason I love it. And is that the last one? I guess that's all of them. Okay. I'm pausing this episode really quickly to ask you if you are in need of some delicious, refreshing summer drinks. Are you tired of the same old, same old? And are you tired of it being so hard to find a healthy drink option that you love because they have artificial flavors, artificial colors, all that refined sugar that you do not need? I have a solution for you. Go to solelyrested.com/summer drink. I think you're going to love what I have brewing for you there. I'm going to be adding to it all summer long, and I'm going to be sharing lots of recipes that you can use only the best ingredients. You can save so much money by making these drinks yourself. And, well, I even have a discount code waiting for you on my absolute favorite teas that I will use in all different ways in all of these different drinks. So go check out solelyrested.com/summer drink, grab that discount code and start diving into these delicious recipes. solelyrested.com/summer drink. I think you're going to find it deliciously refreshing. If we can increase our oxytocin and we can remove the temptation, we are going to be able to beat our soda addictions. We are, guys. And this doesn't just apply to soda. That's just what this episode is about, because that's my thing that I really had to beat. But this will help you. I mean, for all the things we've talked about so far, is going to help you for any processed food or, whatever it is that is the thing you guys know, right? We all know what our big weakness is that's not good for us when it relates to food or drinks. You know, these things are going to help you. But if possible, if you can figure out how to make your own, that is going to be huge in helping you not want the crappy version anymore. Now, I will preclude all of this by saying, I don't know if I've ever, maybe I shouldn't be that dramatic, but I don't know if I've ever had a homemade version of something that I really, really, really like that I would say is better. I'm sure there's been a few that have been as good. And I mean, now that I've been drinking this for a few years, I would say this is as good as Coke, my homemade version. But I remember in the beginning, no, it's definitely not Coke, but it was close enough. It was a very good substitute and I enjoyed it. So it definitely helped me break the habit of buying Coke Zero. Um, it tastes much more like Coke than Coke Zero, by the way. It's just back in the day when I became really into Coke Zero, I was also on the bandwagon of I had to reduce my calories in every way, et cetera, et cetera. I've learned so much since then. Even though I liked Coke better, I decided, Coke Zero was the healthier choice. Funny enough, it was so not. It's actually worse for so many reasons. I think we might have talked about that in that episode back in season 3. Anyway, even if it doesn't taste exactly the same as the store bought, whatever it is you're doing homemade, if this is a goal of yours to eat better and you figured out a way to make something that's pretty daggone good, it's going to get you excited and it's going to be good. There could be family members that aren't on board. There could be friends that kind of roll their eyes like, this is never going to substitute for blank. But they're not on the same journey you are, and they're not um, they don't have the same goal as you do to eliminate that thing, whatever it is. So take heart and listen to yourself, your taste buds, and what you are really looking for, and be encouraged. Whatever it is, I bet you can make a homemade version. Homemade soda is so much better for you than buying Coke for so many reasons. But mainly, it comes down to the fact that with the homemade versions, you are in charge of every single ingredient. So you know exactly what is in your drink. And maybe most importantly, you can choose how to sweeten it. So you can get rid of all those sugars that are so addictive, worse than caffeine, or not caffeine, worse than cocaine. And you can use a complex, all natural sugar that's also benefiting your body and giving you good energy in ways that the junk sugars never would. So, um, if you're using the all natural sugar, you also are not going to have that spike in your blood sugar level. And we talked about that a lot in that episode I'm going to link with the CEO of Azure Standard. It's amazing the difference when you're not spiking your blood sugar level, how the sugar can be a healthy choice for you, because it leads to so many problems when you're spiking your blood sugar level continually all day long based on what you're eating and drinking. So my goal was to slowly wean down the amount of sugar that I was putting in my homemade soda and make it even better. So in the beginning, I started with more sugar and I did then wean it down. And I love the taste of it now with a lot less sugar. So let me pull open a few questions I've had over the years and run down some answers. These actually are all in an article I've written as well, and I'll link this article in the show notes. Actually, you know what? This one, you don't need to go to the show notes. If you want to go to solelyrested.com/Coke, COKE, solelyrested.com/Coke, you will see some of these questions. I'm not going to read the whole article to you. And you can read my answers there, which might be a little more in depth. And you can also, here's the really big thing, get the specific recipe. At the end of this episode, I'm going to run down the ingredients with you and give you a general idea of how to make this homemade soda. But the specific recipe with all the details and a lot of suggestions for substitutions if you don't have these exact ingredients too. It's all there. solelyrested.com/Coke. Okay, so how to make your own soda. Okay, you actually have choices. You can pull together the ingredients yourself, which I'm going to give you that list, or you can also actually purchase an all natural kit that I've discovered to make your own soda. the ingredients I'm going to give you a list of, you probably have all or at least most of them in your kitchen right now. They're not too crazy. But one thing that you're not going to find in my list, nevertheless, and you probably know this, is caramel coloring. No coloring and no artificial flavors, and nothing called natural flavor, which, by the way, I think I've talked about enough. You need to avoid, right? When you see the words natural flavor, if it's not an organic product, you need to be a little fearful and you need to question, reach out to the producer of that product and ask them, what does this mean? What's in there? Because they can put so many bad for us stuff in our food and our drinks and call it natural flavor. Not a good thing. That sounds good, doesn't it? But you're not going to find any of that when you're making it yourself. Because I don't add caramel coloring, you will find that it looks different. It is not the dark color of Coke. It's more of a dark mustardy color, maybe I'd say. But I don't care about the color of it, right? That's not something that matters to me. I want healthy and nutritious. So what gives Coke its flavor? People have asked me, you make your own. What's the secret? What gives it its flavor? Well, it's no secret that the recipe for Coke is, of course, very closely guarded. Nobody actually knows. I think, is it like one person maybe that actually knows every ingredient or something? It's like something really weird. Um, so I'm definitely not privy to the real ingredient list of the real Coke. But the truth is, um, like I said, they're hiding their ingredients anyway under all these things called artificial flavors and artificial colors and all that. But I can tell you that in general, cola is a carbonated beverage that contains something called cola nuts. And that's what you'll find in the kit I'm going to tell you about in a second. I don't use cola nuts. I've never tried to source them. That might be a fun thing to do, but my Coke doesn't involve cola nuts. It's called KOLA nuts. They also the Coke company itself in their actual Coke puts something citrus, some sort of a citrus flavor. They definitely put vanilla and they definitely put cinnamon. So that can give you a start of what to play around with if you want to try your own. And then as far as that kit, um, it is a small family-run business that I think I've mentioned to you guys before. I mentioned it on Instagram a lot because I'm often drinking her teas or making this Coke kit she has, but she also has a root beer kit. I do not make my own root beer, and that's usually it's probably what I use the most for her. And I also get some botanicals from them. But I'll link to them in the show notes and I'll link to this kit. But it's a small family run business. Highly respect them, highly respect their ingredients that they choose. And these kits are great. On top of that, she is using cola nuts, like I said, but on top of that, everything that she's using is actually medicinal ingredients, not addictive, but medicinal, the exact opposite, right? Um, the kola nut, I actually have notes here, grows in West Africa and it is powdered down to be used in things like this Coke mix. And it actually is world renowned for providing energy, reducing appetite, and helping manage depression and anxiety. A whole exact 180 degrees from the kind of feelings you get drinking Coke, in my opinion. So go with the natural good stuff, guys. I'm not saying a glass of this is going to like solve all your problems, but it's a pretty delicious step in that direction that's helping with all of those things. And let's see. What I do is I make the syrup and then I have I hate it when I forget the name of something. It's a carbonation machine that I will add carbonated water to this soda. But you don't have to have that. You can just use seltzer water as well. You can use plain seltzer water or change it up and use different flavors like a cherry seltzer water and you get a cherry Coke, right? People ask me, is this actually cheaper? Because my homemade soda syrup makes a quart of syrup and you only need a tablespoon of it for any tall glass of soda that you're making, it's actually cheaper than buying Coke when you break down the cost of making this quart of the homemade syrup. Plus, you can make exactly how much you want instead of opening like a big 2 liter. Back in the day when I was buying lots of 2 liters of soda, that was a big problem because I would open it and then never finish it. And nobody wanted the flat soda, and there was always waste. So that's not going to happen with the homemade. And if you're making homemade syrup with the cola syrup kit that I'll link in the show notes, I'm happy to tell you that I actually did the math, and you can make 2 liters worth of homemade soda for $2.99. I don't know about where you live, but we happen to pay that much at our local store, I'm sad to say, for a 2-liter Coke these days if it's not on sale. And of course, the homemade version is so far superior. It's worth 3 times the cost of the junk Coke. Heck, it's worth 10 times the cost, but it turns out to be about the same if you're using this kit. Okay. People have also asked me, because people know I'm a fanatic about kombucha, and they ask me, can I combine this? Do I make Coke kombucha? Heck yeah. The very first time that I came up with a version of this Coke syrup that I was happy with, that's the second thing I did. After I had my glass of my homemade Coke, I immediately used some of the syrup and added it to my so I took my first ferment out of my big kombucha vessel. I took a half gallon worth of that out, and then I made my second ferment using some of the Coke syrup. I put about a quarter cup of this syrup into my half gallon of my second ferment of kombucha, and it is amazing. But you don't even have to do it that way. This is really cool, and I love doing this. Whenever I'm making my syrup, you have to, what's the word I want to use? Sift out. Sift isn't the word. You have to drain out. Strain's the word. It's getting late in the day here, guys, just so you know. You have to strain out all of your chunky ingredients. And I will take that and I will actually freeze it, which people must think I'm crazy that don't know better. But you know what? I am kind of crazy, so that's okay. I will put it in a container in my freezer, and I will take out a couple tablespoons, maybe more like 3 or 4 tablespoons of it at a time. So maybe in the end, it winds up to be maybe 3 times I'll use it this way, depending on how much of my ingredients I have. I will take that and put it right in my second ferment. So my unflavored first ferment goes in a jar. I add these chunky pieces that I have strained out to make my Coke, and I just put them directly in my second ferment, and I let it sit there for at least a day, maybe 2 or 3 days. Then I will strain that out, and I have Coke kombucha, and it's really good. So yes, you wholeheartedly can use this in 2 different ways to make homemade kombucha. If you don't know about kombucha, but you want to know more, or if it's something you have always wanted to make and you don't know where to start. For one thing, I have some free resources if you go over to my site or over to my Instagram. I have highlights on Instagram as well that I give lots of tips and tricks on making kombucha. But what I would really recommend is that you go to soullyrested.com/kombucha and check out Kombucha Academy. I have put so much into that to have you right out of the bat, starting off on the right foot and making amazing kombucha without any waste, without messing up, and just having kombucha that you love. So go check out Kombucha Academy. And I even have a coupon code for you guys. If you use coupon code podcast, you can save 30% because I love you guys. So go to soullyrested.com/kombucha, use the promo code podcast, and just dive in. Start making this amazing, gut healthy, nutritious drink. Flavor it with Coke if you want, and save 30%. So I also am asked, how long does the kombucha syrup last? It will last for at least 2 weeks in your fridge. Often I'll wind up keeping it close to a month. I've never had it go bad. It is very sugary because it is a concentrate. So I wouldn't recommend keeping it over that time. Try to use it in a few weeks if you can. But here's the thing. If I'm not lazy, I would never let it get a month old. I will take it out after a couple weeks whenever I haven't used, and I'll make ice cubes with it. It's so easy. You just fill up your ice cube trays, put them in the freezer. The next day, take them out, keep them in an ice or a freezer safe container or bag, and then just use those whenever you're having seltzer water, or just use carbonated water and add a bunch of those ice cubes, or put those ice cubes in your kombucha. Whatever you want to do, that is a great way to preserve them. You, of course, also can thaw them and use them as usual, but freezing them into ice cubes is a great way to make sure your kombucha syrup lasts as long as you need it to. Okay, so there's more, but I think I'll stop there. I'm going to skip on down to tell you what the ingredients are. Okay. And like I said, don't worry. I'm not going to tell you all the specifics because who wants to sit there and listen to all the specifics of a direction of a recipe on a podcast? I know I wouldn't, but go to soulyrested.com/Coke and all of this is there and a whole lot more. You'll be making your own Coke like an expert in no time. So it needs, this is my version of it. Like I said, you can get the kit and then you just add your all natural sugar and you are good to go. But here's what I put in it: lemon juice, ground cinnamon, ground nutmeg. I use anise extract, but there are other things you can use as well. And I list the substitutions at soulyrested.com/Coke. Where did I stop? Anise extract, dried lavender. Again, I give you solutions if you don't have that on hand. Minced ginger, vanilla extract, a little bit of white vinegar or apple cider vinegar, and some water and some maple syrup. That is everything you need to make your own healthy version of Coke. So go check it out, guys. I hope that I have encouraged you, even if you don't drink Coke, maybe I've encouraged you to get out there and figure out a way to make your own version of something that you just don't want to give up, but you know it's really bad for you. You can do it. And then let me know what you made because I want to try it too. So this was fun. I hope you enjoyed the episode and I hope you go check that out at soulyrested.com/Coke. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks for listening, friends. Remember, it's easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it is definitely a good life.